Welcome into the channel, everyone. My name is Kyle Yates. Today I'm here with my top 9 players to stash in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Let's get to it. All right, thanks so much for checking out the channel here. I got a couple things to ask of you before we get going. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, help me get to 1,000 subscribers by the beginning of July. Let's set that goal here, beginning of July, 1,000 subscribers. I think we can get there, and make sure to engage in the, leave a comment here on the video. It just helps amplify this in a massive way, and so I greatly appreciate that, and I will gladly jump in and interact with you guys in the comments here as we take a look at some of these top players to stash. Before I get into the top 9 players to talk about here, I do think that it is worth mentioning just kind of the way to view these. And so we're doing Dynasty is a 2 to 3 year window that I play in, right? This is different than redraft where you are picking the same players year after year. You get to the end of the season and you're not carrying those over. Dynasty is a little bit different, right? You're playing year after year, you're keeping the same roster, but each Dynasty league is a little bit different. You do have Dynasty rosters that have 10 player benches. So some of these players that I'm going to talk about, they are going to be widely available on your league, and you're actually going to have to kind of choose which ones to stash. Then you're going to get to some leagues that have 18 player benches, and so maybe 1 or 2 of these guys is going to be available in your Dynasty league. Kind of wanted to bounce around ADP. We're going to start with the quarterbacks, then go to running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And so I'm going to move all around ADP to kind of give you guys some players to keep an eye on here. And hopefully we're going to be able to give you each and every person that listens to and watches this video an opportunity to be able to scoop up 1 or 2 of these players. Not all of these guys are going to hit. That's an important clarification here. There's a reason why a lot of these guys are on Dynasty waiver wires, but in the coming months, we could see their fortune change. And so to get ahead of it, that is what can push your Dynasty roster over the top as you stair-step value. Let's get going here. We'll go with the quarterback. We will go with Tyson Bagent, quarterback for the Chicago Bears. It's been a little bit since we've seen him on the field aside from some preseason action. Started 4 games in 2023 before Caleb Williams was drafted to the Bears. And he completed 65% of his passes for just 6.0 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. So nothing really to write home about. He has looked good in the preseason when he's gotten the action. But the part here is that he has continued to drive up some trade rumors. And a big part of that is that he is signed to a deal with the Chicago Bears through the end of the 2027 season, but $5 million a year APY. So this is a very, very favorable contract for a team to be able to acquire him that believes that he could be a starting quarterback down the line. Do I think that he is going to be in the top 20 NFL quarterbacks, conversation if he does get a starting job? No, this is a D2 guy that went undrafted for a reason, but he has looked sharp and capable and accurate when he has gotten a starting role here. He lands currently at quarterback 46 in my Dynasty quarterback rankings, number 260 overall, as you see here on the screen. And then just a player that I think is not really on the one quarterback radar. If you're playing in 1 QB leagues, I don't think that he's someone that you need to rush out there and go pick up and stash. But in Superflex formats, a lot of people just aren't really looking at him as a quarterback that has a ton of value. And so in Superflex formats, if he does get traded, let's say there's an injury to an NFL team here this season, we see it quite frequently with these NFL teams, and they go hunting around the backup quarterback market. I think Bagent's going to be near the top of the list for a lot of NFL teams as a player to go out there and acquire because of what he could bring in terms of stability. Now, Chicago is not just going to move off of him for no reason. He's a high-level backup quarterback that they have on a very favorable contract. So why would you necessarily move off of him unless you're getting a very, very favorable return? But the possibility that he does get traded and see his value spike and become a top, one of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL is intriguing, but also the upside that happens if Caleb Williams misses time this year with injury. Then Bagent's stepping into an offense led by Ben Johnson as the offensive mind here, and has Luther Burden, Colson Loveland, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Swift, and Kyle Monangai out of the backfield. A very, very solid offensive line in front of him. This is a really good situation and a high-level backup quarterback. So in QB, in Superflex leagues, as my QB4 is a spot that I would really, really love to have someone like Bagent, a high-level backup as far as roster construction. Take a look to see if he is available in your league. Then we'll move on here. We'll go with Taylon Green, quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, gets added here in the NFL draft in the 6th round. And It's rare that we see this type of athlete, I think, if ever, enter the NFL at the quarterback position. Now, he needs a ridiculous amount of refinement as a passer, so you do have to factor that in. But you do have some weapons here in Cleveland that he could take advantage of with Casey Concepcion, with Denzel Boston, Jerry Jeudy. We'll talk about another wide receiver here in just a minute, but then the Quinshon Judkins out of the backfield, Harold Fannin Jr., and then Todd Monken as the offensive mind. But the athlete that Taylon Green is important to note. Shattered records at the NFL Combine, standing 6'6", 227 pounds, an absolute rocket of an arm, ran a 4.36 40-yard dash. Additionally, he added on a 43.5-inch vertical jump and an 11-foot 2-inch broad jump. Not a refined passer, again. But if you are Cleveland this year, and you have Deshaun Watson, and you have Shedeur Sanders, and you get to the end of the year and you are eliminated from playoff competition, what is going to prevent you from rolling out Taylon Green as a starter in the final 3 or 4 weeks of the season to see what he has, to see if he can get some reps underneath him and develop? Because Todd Monken's walking in. He didn't draft or sign Deshaun Watson in free agency. He didn't draft Shedeur Sanders last year. This is a player that he handpicked at the quarterback position. Granted, yes, in the 6th round, but the upside that he does bring from Monken, just coming from Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and the athlete that he is, I think that he could unlock some creative things from a run game standpoint, which is what is fantasy football gold. So if Taylon Green can get into camp and can really work his butt off to improve as a passer and just get the ball out into the hands of his playmakers, and then he sees work here at the end of the season because the Browns are just looking towards the future, then that's really intriguing to me. And he is buried right now in ADP and in consensus rankings. Got him at quarterback 48 in mind, overall 266. An absolutely fine dart throw to hold on to as your quarterback 5. If you are holding on as your quarterback 4, quarterback 5 in a super flex league, and you have an aging veteran as one of those guys, just someone that's barely clinging on as far as someone on the depth chart there, drop them. There's no upside. You're not going to be comfortable starting them because they're going to bring no upside. Take the chance and shot on a guy like Taylon Green because the upside is through the roof. All right, let's go to the running back position here. We'll go with Marshawn Lloyd, running back for the Green Bay Packers. And I talked about this at the beginning. A lot of dynasty leagues, Marshawn Lloyd's not going to be available in your league. But we're looking at different types of dynasty leagues here where there are some that Marshawn Lloyd actually is available because it's very shallow benches. So I did at least want to bring him up here and talk about him. This is a little bit different too with the Josh Jacobs legal situation, where that's probably changed, where a lot of people scrambled to go add Marshawn Lloyd. A big part of it is because you look at that Green Bay Packers depth chart. Chris Brooks is the RB2, and he's more of a fullback than anything else. So Marshawn Lloyd here has an opportunity to finally make good on the upside and hype that he had surrounding him coming into the NFL a couple of years ago. I was never there with Marshawn Lloyd as the top running back in that class. I never really saw the true upside, but that was because his ADP was getting pushed dramatically up the board. I was the one that was like, let's pump the brakes here. We don't need to go super crazy. You'll see his projections here for this year in my latest premium projections, which you can access over on the Substack. That is Substack. The link for that is right here in the description, but you'll access my premium projections and the premium dynasty trade calculator, which just dropped earlier today as I am recording this. Just $5 a month. It says thank you for my work here and the work that I'm creating. And so I appreciate everyone who subscribes there and supports my work. But Marshawn Lloyd, the path for relevancy here is, I think, finally here for him this year with Josh Jacobs dealing with this legal situation, the off the field stuff. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like for him and whether or not Marshawn Lloyd is actually going to get work and a starting role. Health and durability is the big thing standing in his way. So if you have a manager in your league who has had Lloyd for the longest time and is just finally over, the injury concerns and the durability and all that stuff and has moved on from him, I am perfectly comfortable stashing Marshawn Lloyd at the bottom of my dynasty bench because of his place on the depth chart in Green Bay and the upside here as we move into 2026. Next up is Eli Heidenreich, the running back / wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A player that brings ridiculous versatility to an NFL offense here in Pittsburgh. Coming out of Navy, just had stupid team production from a receiving yardage standpoint. I mean, just put up video game like numbers at Navy in the passing game, in the receiving work. And so as we look at his role here, it fell a lot further in the NFL draft than I thought he was going to. But I think that a big part of it, and I think NFL teams saw it the same way that I did it in watching his tape was how exactly does this skill set translate? I think it's going to take a little bit here for Heidenreich to get his legs under him from an NFL standpoint. I watched 3 games of Eli Heidenreich at Navy, and I think I saw one traditional running back carry where he was lined up behind center, right, behind the quarterback. Otherwise, they were moving him and placing him in all sorts of various weird, funky formations and all that stuff with the offense that Navy is running there, obviously. So we haven't really seen what he can do in an NFL offense. Now, I think that the athleticism is there. I think the work as a receiver is certainly there, but I think his head's going to be spinning here a little bit in year 1. So this is a stash from the standpoint of, I don't think you're going to get much production in 2026. This is more of a 2027 play. You do have Jalen Warren, you have Rico Dowdle here in this backfield. But what happens in 2027? Do they move on from both Dowdle and Warren with their contracts? Does Heidenreich step into the vacated Kenneth Gainwell type role that was in this offense last year? Like there's enough in his path to be able to see some fantasy relevance as we move into 2027. So Eli Heidenreich here as another player to stash at the running back position. Then we go into the wide receivers. We will go back to the Cleveland Browns, which is never really something that I want to do. But Isaiah Bond, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, is a player that I am targeting here as a stash. We have to remember that the fact that he went undrafted in the 2025 NFL draft was not due to talent. Legal issues in the middle of playing out here at the 2025 NFL draft, ends up getting cleared of those charges in August of 2025, subsequently signed with the Cleveland Browns. Didn't make much of an impact in the offense last year. Not many players did with the offense and the state of it last year. But all reports out of minicamp and OTAs here have been that Isaiah Bond has been making an impact here and actually potentially pushing Cedric Tillman out of the roster, out of the 53-man roster. So Isaiah Bond, the talent was in the first round conversation. Like this is a very, very talented wide receiver and a player that no one is thinking about. Even in my rankings, look at where I've got him ranked, 111 overall, or 111 in the wide receiver ranks and 286 overall in my Dynasty rankings. Like this is a player that is not being discussed, but I rank him slightly ahead of consensus because consensus has him further even down the board than that. Bond is a player that I'm willing to scoop up right now because I think that he's going to stick on this roster, and I think that he could push Jerry Jeudy for snaps in 2026. Now, you've got Concepcion, you've got Denzel Boston. It's not an offense that I really, really want to invest in because it's going to be a elite upside, right? This is more of a, hey, I think he can make more of an impact than he did last year in 2026, but then the upside for 2027 is really what has me intrigued here with Isaiah Bond. So target him if you are in a super deep league. I think that he's a player that's getting very, very positive buzz and someone that I'm willing to go out and target. Then we go to Las Vegas. We'll go to Jack Besh, a player that was drafted in the second round of the 2025 NFL draft. Thought that he was going to make more of an impact than he did last year, just 20 receptions. But in his final collegiate season, reeled in 62 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. The talent is there. The role is a little miscast. He needs to be in the big slot role, and he's asked to play a lot outside. Now, with Jalen Naylor coming in, how does that truly factor in? Is Naylor going to be the slot guy and take the majority of the targets there? Trey Tucker moved into the slot quite a bit. You have Brock Bowers, obviously, as that big slot role. So how does this all truly play out? But you look at the wide receiver depth chart that I just listed there, which is Jalen Naylor and Trey Tucker and Jack Besh. Like someone's got to get the ball here in Las Vegas. And this is not a defense that's going to be forcing a ton of 3 and outs. So the playing catch up, the passing volume is going to be there. And I think that Besh in his second NFL season can take more of those steps forward. There's not a ton to point to from an analytical standpoint in his profile to say, man, I have a ton of complete confidence in what he's going to be in 2026 and beyond. But the volume's there. The talent level is there too. It just did not happen in the role that he was with a new coach, with Clint Kubiak. Does that get ironed out? Do they see the upside for Jack Besh in a big slot role? And do we see Kirk Cousins early on in the season and then Fernando Mendoza really lock onto him and Bowers as the number 1 and number 2 targets in this offense? And right now, people that drafted him last year with second or third round, NFL draft picks or rookie picks, really, kind of got burned with what he did last season. And so I think the upside is there for him to bounce back here this season. Jack Besh, a player that I am willing to stash. Then we'll move on here to Jalen Royals, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is really, I mean, he had 3 receptions in 2025. So we are not looking at a player that has a ton of proven track record in the NFL that is going to produce. He is significantly further down the board in Dynasty rankings, at 112 in my wide receiver rankings, just behind Isaiah Bond. But the path for relevancy here this year is higher with Rashee Rice rehabbing in jail right now, and Royals is that slot role. Now, if Rashee Rice is healthy to begin the year and is the starting slot wide receiver, then Royals is not going to be on the field a ton. But Rice, with his durability, with the fact that he's, rehabbing and conditioning from jail this offseason, and then what does that mean for his outlook for the team in 2027? There's a path for Jalen Royals to be a guy that gets work in this offense. And if that is the case, a starting slot wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes has immense value from a fantasy standpoint. And right now he is being completely disregarded from the fantasy community and fantasy perspective. 112 in my wide receiver rankings, further down the board in consensus rankings as well. A player that I am perfectly willing to stash because if Rice misses time to begin the year or gets injured again, Royals is going to be that next man up to step into the offense. A perfect bench stash this season. Then we'll go to a player that I know is not going to be very well received, but that is Jalen Polk, wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. Former second-round pick by the New England Patriots, does next to nothing in his rookie season, gets traded before an even year on the team, gets traded to the New Orleans Saints, and then gets injured and did not play at all last year. This is purely this is still a talented wide receiver. This is still a talented player, just had his head spinning in year one, maybe, and I think was overdrafted, right? I mean, it was drafted in the 30s overall, at 37 off the top of my head in the NFL draft. So this is a very, very well thought of player in the NFL community and NFL draft community. Maybe it was a little bit overdrafted based on where I had him in rankings, but still, he's not worthy of being completely buried. And so the opportunities to find a player that is this talented on your Dynasty waiver wire are very, very few and far between. And this is one that I really just want to take the chance on to see how this works out. 141 in my wide receiver rankings, 371 overall in Dynasty. A player that I'm not projecting or predicting is going to have a massive breakout or is going to work his way into the starting role, right? He's got to climb Chris Olave, Jordan Tyson, and Devon Vele there in New Orleans. But again, it's in Dynasty, you're simply looking to stair-step value. So if I can scoop up a guy like Jalen Polk right now, stash him on my bench, maybe he gets some play early on in the year. Maybe one of those guys gets injured. Jordan Tyson, certainly with durability, could be the guy that Jalen Polk steps in and steps into his role when and if Tyson misses time. Then Jalen Polk shows some things. Maybe I can then ship him off for a 3rd-round rookie pick. Or if he takes another step forward, maybe a 2nd-round rookie pick, right? Like, it's highly, highly unlikely, but the chances and opportunities to get these kind of guys onto your Dynasty roster are few and far between. And so this is a player that I want to point out here, not predicting or projecting a massive breakout or step forward. But right now, you can get him for absolutely nothing. He's available in pretty much every Dynasty league, different than what I talked about at the top. And so a player that I want to take the chance on. Then we'll go to the tight end position. We'll go with Greg Dulcich, tight end for the Miami Dolphins. Did flash a little bit last season here in Miami, but now we have a completely different offensive scheme. Jalen Waddle's out of town. Tyreek Hill's out of town. Mike McDaniel's out. New quarterback with Malik Willis. How does that all play out? But this is purely a gamble and bet because of the fact that there are very few proven pass catchers here in Miami. You have the wide receiver room that has guys like Tutu Atwell, Jalen Tolbert, and then Chris Bell Jr. in the NFL draft, Caleb Douglas. Like, these wide receivers are not really well thought of or highly regarded in league circles. And so this is probably one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL. That leaves an opportunity for a pass catcher like Greg Dulcich. You ask him to be a blocker, he's not going to thrive. But you ask him to get out and get downfield and into those intermediate routes, that's where Dulcich can actually do some damage. And they're going to have to throw the ball way more than I think they're anticipating here in Miami with the state of that defense as well. The volume is there. And right now, 41 in my tight end dynasty rankings, 288 overall. People are not thinking about Greg Dulcich whatsoever. And I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes as a top 20 guy this year from a pure, now he's a little bit older, so you have to account for that in the dynasty rankings, but a top 20 finish for a player who could see 5 to 7 targets each game with Dulcich's athleticism and ability, like that could be enough to put him into that top 20 conversation as a bye week fill-in. But again, he's on waiver wires everywhere. No one is thinking about Greg Dulcich, a player that I'm willing to go out there and target here this year. Those are my 9 players to stash in Dynasty right now. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell to get notified for when new content drops. You can find more information over on my Substack. I'm delivering a newsletter to you 3 times a week with the latest news and then my custom content that's getting delivered to you guys. So make sure to sign up for just $5 a month. A cup of coffee a month helps support me as I do this. You get access to premium tools like my premium projections, and then of course the Dynasty trade calculator that just dropped. So make sure to check that out. Support my work here. Greatly appreciate you guys. I'll be back soon with another video. Until next time, I'm Kyle Yates. Take care.